Welcome everyone to the Mass Alliance for 21st Century Disability Policy meeting. I just want to quickly go over the agenda first. The first thing is I do want to let everyone know that the meeting is being recorded. After the meeting, within maybe a couple of days after the meeting, we'll send out the recording as well as the PowerPoint slides. And in the slides, there are links that we're going to be mentioning in our presentation, and you'll have access to those in the file that we'll share. And Jackie Doherty will also share those links in the chat. So today's agenda includes obviously the welcome. I'm really excited to see the number of people who have joined us today. We'll give a quick update on the leadership updates for the Department of Developmental Services. We'll touch on the fiscal intermediary for the participant-directed program. We'll touch also on the topic of independent facilitator, our MA21 achievements, and then we are excited to share our priorities for this year and moving forward. And then we'll go ahead and stop the recording, and we'll have our open dialogue. So who is MA21? For those who are just joining us maybe for the first time and you're not familiar with MA21, the Massachusetts Alliance for 21st Century Disability Policy was formed in 2007. The work actually started prior to that, but the focus has been to protect the right of people with disabilities to self-direct, and through our efforts, we helped pass the Real Lives Law in 2014. MA21 is a partnership of advocates, family members, other stakeholders, and disability advocacy organizations listed there here on the slide. You can find more information about our partners by visiting the MA21 website. So what is self-direction? Self-direction is built on the foundation of self-determination. In the Real Lives Law and the regulations, you won't find a definition on self-direction, but you will find a definition for self-determination. So as I said, self-direction is built on the foundation of self-determination. Self-determination relates to behavior. It's what motivates us to do something. And everyone is worthy of being able to make decisions about how they live. The self-direction service model under the Department of Developmental Services enables the person, adults eligible for DDS services, to create individualized supports based on their person-centered plan. There are two options under the self-direction service model. One is the participant-directed program, and this is where the participant and the family has primary responsibility to manage their budget and services, and assistance is provided by a DDS support broker, as well as the fiscal intermediary. The other model is called agency with choice, and this is where the participant shares responsibilities with a qualified provider agency for managing their budget and services. The link that you see on the slide, this is where you can actually go. If you go to this link, you can read the DDS definition of self-direction And you can also, on the same webpage, you can download the flyer that provides more information on self-direction services. So I mentioned the MA21 website. I'm proud of the work that's been done that has captured so much information on this website. But here you can, learn your rights. You can review fact sheets and informational webinars that we have recorded our meetings, and again, you can access the recordings from the website. You can also register for future meetings. We have, if you click on the link for the meetings, we have, you'll see the list of scheduled meetings, the dates. We meet always on a Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. So again, please register for upcoming meetings and don't miss out on great information. You can also subscribe to our communications. We send out, information on upcoming meetings and any updates relating to self-direction. And you can also take action. You can attend the legislative events, which we will share information on some upcoming events. And it's also an opportunity to be able to contact your legislators. Having a relationship, with your legislators is really important. They represent, they're working for us rather, and it's important for us to get connected. I mentioned the recordings, previous MA21 meetings. The link to the YouTube channel is also provided on the MA21 website. Next slide here. Robert?
Yeah, so my name is Robert Beckett. My wife and I have a 47-year-old son with Down syndrome who lives with us, and he's participating in the participant-directed program, and employs someone to assist him, and also has contracted for services. So we've been on it for about 5 years now, and of course we've been going through my wife is the lead on the fiscal intermediary, so going through the change from DPL to Acumen certainly has been a challenge for her and the work that we have. They've done a good job. So that's my brief introduction. I live in Brookline, Massachusetts. I think, as you all know, the leadership issue is of course very important. The Real Lives Law was enacted in 2014, and I think when we get down to the kind of the history of MA21 and what we've been doing in the last 4 years, you could certainly say that the department has not vigorously implemented the Real Lives Law as required by the law itself, in terms of regulations and then resulting policies. So the leadership of the organization, DDS, is very important. And as you all probably know, Jane Ryder was the commissioner until August of 2024. And she then retired, and Sarah Peterson, who had been the general counsel lawyer for DDS, is now the acting commissioner. She's been in that position 4 or 5 months now. So then there is a national search for a new commissioner that is underway. And, the results of that recruitment and selection, and whether it's in of course, people in-house at DDS and then out of DDS can all apply. So, it would be an expectation. I think there's an expectation that sometime later this year. I don't want to be specific, but in the next coming months, there's going to be they're hiring a new commissioner. That will certainly affect our efforts. And then another important component is that we see the Self-Determination Advisory Board, which is a statutory creation of the Real Lives Law, as a very important board in terms of furthering the development of self-direction and self-determination. Liz Sandblom, who is the acting assistant commissioner for operations, there's a lot of acting assistants at this point, but she's the acting assistant commissioner for operations. She has been the lead DDS staff support for the Self-Determination Advisory Board for years, and now she's resigning for another opportunity. So that's going to lead to different lead staff and at for the Self-Determination Advisory Board, and that's certainly an issue that gives us an opportunity in MA21 to establish relationships with the people that will now take the lead in advising the Self-Determination Advisory Board. And at the end of this, we'll have time to go back, and if there's any discussion people want to have on any of these topics, we can then have them. As you all, I think, would know, for the participant-directed program under the Real Lives Law, there's a fiscal intermediary that is required. In other words, if the individual and his team is going to hire an employee, then to provide services and supports, then they need to go through the fiscal intermediary, and public-private partnerships, PPL, was the fiscal intermediary for years. And on December 22nd of 2024, Acumen became the new fiscal intermediary for Massachusetts. So as I indicated, I think it would be fair to say that there has been, it's been somewhat of a difficult transition, and the difficulties are continuing and will continue for a period of time. So again, we can cover that if people have input on that at the end. We can fully develop that. And it's, the difficulties are just emerging. I mean, in a way, in terms of people are coming out and discussing the problem. So the issue of whether there's anything for an MA21 or any other organization can impact the transition, I think is somewhat uncertain, but certainly the information is coming out about the difficulties. And at the bottom of that screen, you'll see that what we have is we have the link to the DDS website on the details of Acumen. Okay. So this was kind of the hot topic issue, and I think it's one that's very timely. When the Real Lives Law was enacted in 2014, there was a requirement that every individual, after the enactment of the law, and their team would have the right to hire, retain an independent facilitator. And the Real Lives Law, which again is down below on Sessions Law, defines the role and states that every self-directed participant has a right to an independent facilitator, and that can be funded through the self-determination budget. DDS has now issued regulations which provide minimum qualifications for the independent facilitator role. And those regulations down below are also where it says www.mass.gov. The regulations are there, and for those people interested in it, the regulations is probably where you ought to go. Although it's important to read the real lives law too, and its definition of independent facilitator and how it describes the independent facilitator role. But the regulations define it under 1403, pretty much follow the real lives law definition. And then under 1408, the minimum qualifications are set forth, and they are minimum. They basically have to be an adult, fingerprinted, and have to have a couple of years working with someone with disabilities. So you can read the exact qualifications in that second link there. And again, it's 1403 and then 1408. Want to go to the next slide? So what is an independent facilitator? It's someone that the individual and his team choose to help think about and create a self-direction plan. An individual facilitator cannot provide services, supports, or good to you, or be employed by someone who provides services and supports for you. So that's the independence of it. And the independent facilitator is to help with short and long-term planning for your life and the supports you need. So with respect to the independent facilitators, again, after 10 years, the regulations finally now provide for the independent facilitator as of October of this year, of last year, October 25th of 2024. That's when these regulations are at the bottom, last one that you can download. That's when they became effective. And once that became effective, then the department moved to say, well, we need to issue a request out there for people to participate in it. So if you meet the minimum qualifications, sign up and at least tell us you're interested. And then that followed with the department determining that besides the minimum qualifications I discussed, there has to be some type of a training module. So right now, there is a self-direction advisory board subcommittee that has been meeting on a monthly basis. The next meeting of that group is February 12th of this year, and the group is working at this point on developing the training. So I know when we sent out January 15th, when we sent out the agenda, not the agenda, but the reminder of this meeting, we also sent a link to that meeting, and some of you may have attended it. Of course, it's now critical to keep that meeting going. That now that Liz Semblen is no longer going to be there, that we do everything we can to make sure there's effective leadership of that subcommittee as well as a VESTAD. And then I would say also Self-Determination Advisory Board, their meeting schedule is March 5th, the next one, and then goes on June 4th and September 13th. And anybody who wants to go to the SDAB, Self-Determination Advisory Board, all you got to do is just Google DDS Self-Determination Advisory Board and you get to the page on it. Okay.
So I just want to share MA21's advocacy. We're building on years of progress, and again, I'm really excited to be a part of this alliance. Many of us are volunteers, and we have done incredible work. So there are folks who, again, started many years ago. So the years of progress, what we've worked on, empowering people to be strong advocates for change. This is why we plan these meetings. We want to go ahead and provide information and updates to help everyone to advocate for change, to strengthen the self-direction service model. Over the years, the work that has been done led to the Real Lives Law passed, but just recently, we talked about, and Robert will share more details on this, but adopting the Real Lives Law regulations. We've, in my opinion, done a great job to collaborate with both DDS and the Executive Office of Health and Human Health and Services Leadership. We've promoted the SDAB's role as an effective advisory board, and we are working now to expand the MA21 network. Robert?
Yeah, so I saw the chat message briefly, and I really appreciate the chat. We decided that just kind of too large of a group to have answered questions, verbal questions, but I really appreciate the chat. And the chat had to do with what are you talking about in terms of these October 25th, 2024 regulations. So that's what this slide is about, and that's where independent facilitators came in. So again, you have a situation where the Real Lives Law was adopted in 2014. That's going on 11 years ago, and the law required that there be regulations issued. So it was a requirement. There were 3 specific regulations that DDS had to issue regulations, which are rules and have much of the effect of law because they're the carrying out of the agency of the law. And the 2 of the areas were that the department had to issue regulations on the independent facilitator role, and secondly, the department had to issue regulations relative to the appeal rights that people had under the law. And so there were no regulations, and that's in a sense that's where MA21 kind of changed its focus a little bit in 2020-21, where it just said, DDS, you've got to implement this, you've got to get this law going from a standpoint of regulations and policies and get it moving and much more structure to it. So the first set of regulations that DDS proposed in October of 2022, that's really when we began mobilizing MA21 membership individuals and having these large group meetings. And we were very successful at the hearing on it, over 20 substantial written comments and 20 to 30 people testifying. And as a result of all of that, the department withdrew the regulations. Again, this was back in 2022, November 21st hearing, 2022. So they withdrew them because they were just not adequate. And so then they took almost a couple of years to finally get the October 25th. And again, we MA21 members and individuals commented on the proposed regulations that were issued in May of 2024, and then finally resulting in October 25th. The major improvements in those October were that there were specific appeal rights established for self-directed services as required by the Real Lives Law, and an adequate time frame of 30 days was given to appeal. So those appeal rights are important. The law said there had to be appeal rights, and now there are specific appeal rights. And then the other 2 things that really are going on with what DDS and the Self-Determination Advisory Board have said is their priorities now that the regulations have been adopted. We need to move on to policies, and the 2 policy efforts and implementation efforts are focused on 2 factors: the independent facilitator, which I discussed previously, and let you know where they are with that. And then the second policy that DDS has announced at the SDAB meeting in December is that they're going to be working on how does DDS calculate that the self-determination, self-direction budget is equivalent to the cost of traditional services. So that's a requirement of the real lives law that the self-direction budget be based on needs of the individual, current needs, and that the budget be equivalent to the cost of traditional services. If anybody missed the presentation that Ed Underwood, a member of MA21, did in November, I'd encourage you to go back and look at that recording of that discussion of what individuals and their team members can do now about trying to make sure that they have at least knowledge of what their budget ought to be. That's the, in other words, the funding allocation. What's the total amount of money that ought to be available for supports and services? So it's unfortunate that we even have to have a presentation like that in November, because the department should have a policy and should spell out that how the department determines that the budget is equivalent. But we don't have that now, and I don't know how long it's going to take for them to develop the policies. We'll be working with them, but in the meantime, I encourage you to go back in November and look at the November MA21 presentation on that issue. I think that's what I have. Okay, well, so we've kind of covered this in a way. This is more of a general way, but we really now Self-Determination Advisory Board is now really in that process of, I think, becoming engaged and really interacting on, particularly on these two major policies issues: the independent facilitator, assuring that everybody has the ability to at least retain one by there being a list and to include in their budget if the person wants to do that. And what we've been doing in the past, there are MA21 members. The Arc of Mass has a membership on it. Nora Bent is the Leo Sarkisian was the person on the SDAB. But now Nora Bent, now that Leo's gone, is now the Arcs Director of Governmental Affairs. She's now on the SDAB, and we just recently, Ed Underwood, a member of SDAB, was recently appointed to SDAB. So we're thrilled with that. We've had other very capable people, Liz Fahey and Barbara Pandolfi and others who have been members, and we've MA21 members of both MA21 and SDAB, and we've been trying to build that up and get them to be an effective advisory board. We've also encouraged MA21 individual members and those from organizations to attend the SDAB meetings. And, it has an impact when the public is invited to these Self-Determination Advisory Board and the subcommittee on independent facilitators, but both the main body, the Self-Determination Advisory Board, and they're subject to the public meeting law. And it makes a difference if people show up, because then the board understands that there's a public out there that is interested and concerned. And it also provides for the public to know, whether or not the board is functioning well and how well the staff support is being given by DDS.
Thank you, Robert. And I want to just take this opportunity to be able to share, the SDAB subcommittee meeting that was held last week, Wednesday, January 15th, I believe is the date. I took a peek at the number of people who had jumped in on the meeting, and there were, I want to say, 31 people on the call. The SDAB and the subcommittee meetings are not recorded, which is why it's so important for people to join to get, the information that they need to advocate for their loved one or for themselves. So MA21 achievements, putting this information together for today's meeting, I was actually taken aback with what we have actually achieved just in the last couple of years. We have led 10 meetings with over 120 people registered, and our meetings have always had at least 60 people in attendance. And it's usually over 60, but definitely a great turnout. Folks want information, they need information, so I'm just excited to be able to share that information with you. The webinar on the Real Lives Law, Robert had mentioned this. Ed Underwood did an excellent job on providing information on equivalent individual budgets for self-directed services. And again, that was in November of 2024, and it's a recorded meeting. So please access that recording, and you will definitely be satisfied with the information that's provided. Our MA21 library, again, Ed Underwood played a huge role in getting this together. It's just an information portal. It has a lot of important information and facts on the self-direction service model. So we will touch on that again in just a bit. And then, just planning for our strategic informational webinars. So we have done, and when I say we, again, it's not just the folks presenting. We have so many people who are involved in MA21, including the partnering organizations that continue to help us achieve. So looking ahead, MA21 priorities for this year and going forward. Oops, excuse me. Technology is not my friend right now. There we go.
Good afternoon. My name is Jackie Doherty. I'm the Director of Education and Outreach for the ARC of Massachusetts, which is one of the organizations that partner with MA21. What we want to talk about looking forward, I think we've got 4 bullets here, but overarching of all of these bullets is the concept of providing you with information and tools so that you can advocate for yourselves and your loved one and be part of our community of advocacy and the work we do. So the first one is to focus on practical problem solving through informative webinars. And this is, as the webinar that was held in November talked about the whole budget piece, and the ones that will be coming up have that same kind of focus, giving you information that you can use to help advance your own program under self-direction. And part of that is bullet number 2, understand your rights under the Real Lives Law and the newly adopted DDS Self-Direction regulations. Once you understand what you are entitled to, you have a better sense of how to make sure you get those aspects taken care of. And again, enhance awareness and education on key DDS and mass health resources and processes to know what's out there, what are the timelines that these agencies are supposed to follow, so that you can get the most out of the resources that are out there for you and your loved one. And then finally on this list, increase collaboration with DDS and EOHHS leaders, because we need to have our voices be heard in terms of what changes, what's working, what isn't working. That's how we make improvements and things move forward. Next slide, please. So key priority number 1, informational and educational webinars. So we have a series for the MA21 Tuesday meetings. These are bi-monthly meetings with the group of MA21 members. Everybody is welcome to attend these meetings. You can sign up in advance to get notification and links. And I think Robert will be talking more specifically about some of the content for those meetings, as well as coordinated webinars with MA21 member organizations. As I mentioned, the ARC of Massachusetts is one of the member organizations of MA21. And so the next slide, I'll talk about some upcoming webinars we have planned. So the next one is actually tomorrow at 12 o'clock. It's not too late to sign up. This one is Mass Health 101, the basics. We are aware a lot of people struggle with getting the resources and supports they need from Mass Health. So this is a two-part series. The second one will be on February 26th, also at 12 o'clock. We'll do a deeper dive into some of these issues. What you'll find out, tomorrow's webinar will be focused on things like how do you get assistance getting Mass Health coverage? What are tips for contacting Mass Health? Some of the verification documents that are available for you, such as residential verification, income verification, shared authority documents, just kind of the basic lay of the land. And then we'll go into one of the parts of the webinar tomorrow will be to ask what are some secondary things about Mass Health that you're struggling with that we can make sure to cover in the February webinar. Next slide, please.
So one of the major priorities now going 2025 on is, I think, really to, what can MA21 do to help individuals and their team really become the leaders in the person-centered planning and in the individual support plan process? How can you really take the lead, particularly by lead, I mean, do you need an independent facilitator to help? How do you take the lead with your support broker to make sure that your self-determination budget is correct? How do you not only employ individuals, but also how do you maximize services that you can contract? And a lot of times the employment issue kind of leads to one-to-one and some levels of isolation. And certainly one of the things that MA21 wants to do is expand services that people can go, so that there's some involvement with the community, whether that's people with impairments or whether that's just the general community. So in terms of that, and there was in the chat, there was a thing of, well, who are the MA21 members, or how do you become a member? Well, we're not a 501c3. We don't have a board. We don't have as much structure as some places do. But what I would say to you is that in effect, for the last 2 years now, we've had these 10 meetings and great mobilization of the community on the regulations and so the people on this that are registered and attend these meetings every month, every 2 months, they're members. But at the end of this, we'll give you an idea of how you could become even more of a member by being active in the work groups that MA21 has that meet regularly and develop, for instance, develop this plan for the webinars. And we'll get to that at the end. And then as far as the webinars are concerned, there was in the chat, how could we link to the November meeting? And that's really important. And I don't know that even if the November meeting is in the library, I'm just not sure. But we'll get out a specific email to everybody. We'll get out a specific email to everybody on the issue of where you can find that link, because that's one of the webinars that we developed in November that fits into these webinars. So the March 18th, and these are ideas now, and we're not locked into this, but we feel like, number one, the Real Lives Law and the whole individual support plan process, the whole Medicaid waiver process, the 3 adult waivers, they're all based, the foundation of those are all current needs assessments. And it's a deficit in Massachusetts that there are often not accurate current needs assessments that support the person-centered plan. So this is going to be a deep dive into how individuals and their team members can make sure that they have developed and make sure that they know that the current needs are set forth in each year's review. Then on May 20th, we're looking at, okay, we have appeal rights. We've always had them under the DDS provisional services, and now there are specific appeal rights under the real lives law. For instance, you can appeal the funding allocation or the budget allocation that you have been given. And so we hope perhaps Disability Law Center, one of the member groups, can put that on, but we'll get a capable person that can delve into the appeal rights, both appeal rights on the traditional services and then the specific ones under the real lives law. September 16th, we're going to look in detail at the independent facilitators, their resources, and how to fund it. And then in November 18th, I think we'll probably revisit Ed Underwood's presentation that was made in November and continue to work on, how do you make sure that funding allocation is equivalent to traditional cost of services. So some additional topics that we're thinking about is the importance of the plan of care for the 3 DDS waiver programs. That's the adult supports, the community living, and the intense supports waivers. Plan of care in that is critical. We're looking at potentially an overview of Mass Health long-term care services, and a panel discussion on self-directed services focused on independent contractors and companies that want to provide services or are providing services under the real lives law. And when I was doing this, I was thinking, well, there's some other issues that we may deal with, and one is priority. What's the prioritization system? Most of us on this call are past that issue. Or we have a priority, but what does it mean? And how do you move from one priority to another? And how do you move from one waiver to another? For instance, the adult services waiver of DDS has a cap of $60,000 now, just in August of 2024. The community living waiver has a cap of $100,000 as of August 2024. That's the most that can be spent. The intense support has no cap. So how is it you fell into one of those waivers? So that's it for those people that are on the adult waiver. So those are kind of the focus. I'd say the next couple of years, MA21 is going to be again looking at how can we put practical problem solving seminars together so that individuals and their team members can take the lead and not just be subject to the system, which may not be as clear as it should be in its policies and procedures. So how can we take the lead, and you'll let us know whether or not these are practical or problem solving, as we go through it. We're going to do the best we can. Okay.
So our key priority number 2, this is the.
Okay, let me just go back to, before you go back to the screen, because somebody, what was the chat? How does the waiver, the question was, how does the waiver allocation relate to the budget? Well, it's just if you're in the adult waivers, that's an agreement with the federal government that is the maximum budget. But it's a good question. The reason that the budget caps in the adult supports waiver and the community living waiver went up from 40 to 60,000 in the adult supports and 70 to 100 in the community living is that there's been substantial increases over the last 3 years in provider reimbursement and provider rates under Chapter 257 of the Massachusetts law. And so those were carried forward, and in essence, that's what they represented. So what if you get down to the cost of equivalent traditional services budgets, the cost of traditional services like community-based day programs has gone up 30, 40, 50%. And now that's reflected in the adult waivers. So my answer to you would be, it remains a cap, but the cap has gone up, and the focus is your budget for self-direction, self-determination, is it equivalent to what traditional costs would be? So that's again the November 2024 discussion and webinar. Okay.
So key priority number 2, MA21 Working Group Initiative. This is where I could possibly make a lot of friends, okay? So we need more folks to be involved. We need your help with the MA21 priorities. And these are just some of the areas that we need help with. It takes a lot of work to prepare for these presentations and put the content together. We need help with organizing and expanding the MA21 library. We need folks to attend the SDAB and independent facilitator subcommittee meetings. This is where, I mentioned earlier that they're not recorded. So it does help to have folks attend the meetings, take notes, and then be able to come back and share information. We also need to increase our advocacy for the self-direction budgets to be equal to the cost of traditional services. That's an area where we need more information. We need to come together and just talk about what will it take for DDS to implement the Real Lives Law and with self-direction. What we're planning to do is we're going to send out somewhat like a survey, but we want to be able to put this working group together and meet. We would meet like once a month. We would come up with a date that works for the majority of those who are interested in actually getting involved in this way. And then we'll take it from there. And this is how a lot of the work that happened under MA21 just created positive change and was so effective in making things happen. It's because people came together. And that's I didn't introduce myself, but I'm also, I'm a parent. My son is now 31, but when he was 3.5 years old, I attended the Family Leadership Series that was facilitated by Mass Families Organizing for Change, now Mass Families. But, it was that many years ago that I learned that in order for change to happen, I needed to get involved and I needed to advocate. So, again, we'll be sending out information, about what this means, working group initiative, and we'll give you the opportunity to be able to join rather, and just help us move forward with the work that needs to be done.
So Diane, if I could just add, this is really the ask for this meeting, and all that's gone before is to try to give some foundation. But we're at the point now where we need some more leadership in MA21. We've had some changes in the leadership, some changes in the structure. So we've adopted that we're going to develop this monthly work group And it is a work group because it's not you don't just meet once a month and talk. You talk about, well, where are we in the webinar presentations? What webinars have we decided on? Who are we going to recruit to really do high quality problem solving? Is the library working? Is it user friendly? Who's going to monitor and make sure the library is kept up to date? That November presentation by Ed Underwood should be in there, but we have difficulties in just we don't have the resources and we need more resources. So it's not just attend the SDAB meetings, but it's also to help in trying to support SDAB members, particularly those that are MA21 members in doing an effective job. And then the major issue of advocating for self-direction budgets. So really what they ask here is, and these are just 4 areas, but the survey that Diane's talking about is, what area would you be interested in if you would join this work group? Where could you put some energy, not only on the monthly meeting, but on working that topic up and implementing it? So these are 4 ideas, and I just hope out of this meeting we can develop 3, 4, 5 additional persons for that monthly meeting so that we can have effective work group.
Thank you, Robert.
And so we're back to our, one of our overarching goals, and that is advocacy. So this slide talks about the 47th annual legislative reception that's happening at the State House on March 6th. You've got the link to register there. We really want to fill the room. And something I wanted to point out, we have 22 new legislators going to the State House here in Massachusetts right now, 19 new representatives, 3 new senators. We want these people educated and aware of the concerns of our community and partners in taking action that will help. And just to give an example, last year, the ARC of Massachusetts and many of the advocates that are here today worked to increase the budget for our frontline workers. And we just got information that last year at this time, the vacancy rate for positions was 26%. And as of today, it's 19%. So we see some movement because of that advocacy to increase the pay for people who are providing direct services to our loved ones. And, not that the staffing issue has been resolved, but we're moving that needle in the right direction. And that is the goal behind a lot of the advocacy work. The other item I wanted to point out is save the date for Tuesday, April 8th. That's going to be Autism Advocacy Day. Again, a day when we want to get as many people out or contacting the legislators if you can't make it to Boston. I know everybody's plates are full. But this is important work. And we also have an action alert link, which I see is not included on the slide. And I know that so our Director of Government Affairs, Nora Bent, is on the call, and she just put the link. This is a very simple to do. You sign up for action alerts. It can be a text on your cell phone that says you want to text your legislator. They will do the work of connecting you with the legislator. And it's just you being heard and seen by the people who are elected to represent us and our concerns. And I don't know if I've covered everything, Nora. Is there anything else you want to add about the importance of advocacy and how we can work together to make the change we want to see in the future?
Thank you, Jackie. Yeah, would love for folks to come to these events. I'm going to put the link that's on your screen in the chat to register for the March 6th event. I'll also put my email address in the chat. We're updating some advocacy trainings here in the Government Affairs Department and are happy to bring that to any networks that you are a part of, maybe even as part of MA21. And we'll also be sharing very soon our legislative platform for this session, which just started, as well as our budget advocacy pushes. So if you click on that action alert link and register for our advocacy newsletter, you'll get those straight to your inbox as soon as they're ready.
Thank you. And so, and Robert had mentioned this earlier, but our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, March 18th, at 1:30 p.m. So again, please sign up for our communications, but also register for the 2025 meetings. The March meeting, building a strong foundation, needs assessments and person-centered support plans. This is a really important topic, and we can promise you that you will definitely receive a lot of great information. If you could, anyone, please, you're welcome to send feedback to us on today's meeting. The email address, ma21@arcmass.org. We would appreciate feedback. We would appreciate any ideas, on how we can continue to do what we've been doing for so many years. But just really appreciate your thoughts on our meeting today. So I'm going to stop the recording.